if you're going to go down that whole rabbit hole of getting into whiskey, proof is something you're going to have to learn. Because if I had to learn it, then you're going to have to learn it too, because that's what we're going to do today, is talk about proof. Sorry, I know it's a boring subject, but time to learn. Proof. Yeah, it's kind of a boring subject, but if you're gonna get into whiskey or any kind of spirits for that matter, proof is something you're gonna need to learn about. And unfortunately, it's a little boring. It's quite a bit boring, but hopefully you'll know something by the end of this video. Most people will ask, what is proof? And how do you find proof? And why do we care? So let's start with probably the most controversial question of why do we care? The first being, back in the 16th century, the government wanted to know what was proof so they could tax it at a higher rate. The other story is that in the Old West, people wanted to make sure that they were getting exactly what they were paying for. Now, this is where the stories kind of are the same. Basically, to find proof then, they would take a little bit of gunpowder, pour a little bit of that spirit onto the gunpowder, and then light it on fire. If it lit on fire, it was considered a proofed spirit. Now, again, the government, when they found that it was a proofed spirit, they would tax it at a higher rate. The Old West, then they knew they were getting what they paid for, so they didn't get ripped off. And unfortunately back then, a lot of people got ripped off if they didn't know that little trick. Now the problem with that is it's not very accurate. So in an effort to come up with a more accurate way of finding proof, they came up with a scientific way to discover the proof. And this scientific method is called ABV, or alcohol by volume. And alcohol by volume, this is where we get really boring. In the UK in 1816, they came up with this scientific measurement of density and gravity. And using density and gravity, they could come up with the alcohol by volume. And to come up with alcohol by volume, they came up with a tool, and that tool is a hydrometer. Basically, it's a glass tube that you put the spirit in, and a weighted bobber, and you drop that bobber into the spirit. Based on how much it floats within that liquid, that determined the alcohol by volume. And since alcohol and water have different densities, it would float at different heights, therefore giving you that measurement. And then again, in 1952, the UK adopted another form, another form of standardizing ABV and or proof. The UK used a proof to ABV ratio of 4 to 7. Then multiplying that by 1.75, they came up with the alcohol proof. And then in 1980, this became the legal standard or scale for the UK. Now, calculating the ABV is standard across all forms of spirits and pretty much universal throughout the entire world. But calculating your proof versus your ABV has differences in different countries. In the UK, they multiply by 1.75, but in the United States, we just double the ABV to get our proof. But then you've got also France, who just says whatever the ABV is, that's the proof. I'm not sure if we're lazy or the French are lazy, or if we're both just more lazy than the UK, or if neither one of us like math. Doesn't really matter, but that's how they calculate it, and that's what we go with. So taking that into consideration, this is 46 ABV. Here in the United States, we would call that 92 proof. In France, they would call that 46 proof. And in the UK, well, if you want to do the math on that, multiply that by 1.75, and there you go. Now, with all of that said, proof is not required by the US government on any spirits, but they still do it out of tradition. And that's fine. And you'll talk to other whiskey people that they only like the higher proofs, and you may get made fun of if you're only starting with your 80 and 90 proofs, but that's really not fair, because I've had some 94s that drank a lot higher proof, or seemed a lot higher proof than what the proof said on the bottle. And that's where proof now is kind of subjective. So don't ever let somebody say that you need to be drinking a higher proof, because it's not necessarily true. You'll hear those people called proof hounds. And that's not really fair either, because some people, once they've started really going down that rabbit hole of all kinds of whiskeys and bourbons and scotches and things like that, they start to try higher proofs, and they'll find something else in it. And this is the other reason why we care about what the proof is. Now, that doesn't mean you have to drink the higher proof. Doesn't mean that at all. But because of the way they proof down spirits by adding water or flavors or coloring, that will also affect all of your proof or your ABV. But some of that might actually add to it. And so in turn, the higher proofs, because they don't have those added whatever in them, you may find other tasting notes that you didn't find in a lower proof. Now, that's not always true. Well, and that's why I did this, is because people sometimes don't understand proof. A little bit of knowledge will go a long way, and that's why I say that people need to understand proof when they're getting into a spirit, whether it be wine, whiskey, rum, vodka. Any of those are also measured by ABV and or proof. And that way you're not getting stuck in a rut by only going with a certain ABV or a certain proof, or worried that a proof might be too high for you. Because, again, taste is subjective. So don't let anybody tell you that you're drinking too low of a proof. It's literally about what you like and what is good to you. But one suggestion is, if you start with 100 proof, don't go down to a lower proof, because that ABV or that proof on a higher level is going to blow out your taste buds for the next one, and you're probably going to miss something. So in that respect, it's good to look at your proof or your ABV when you start trying whiskeys, or any spirit for that matter, because then you'll get to enjoy them a little more. So I hope that this was informative. I hope it wasn't too boring for everybody. Now you know. And knowing is, I'm not going to go there. I'm not doing that. So if you enjoyed this, and if you took a little bit of knowledge out of it, I'd really appreciate it if you'd give this video a like. If you would subscribe, I would greatly appreciate that, because I'm really wanting to get this channel monetized. And without subscriptions, it's going to be kind of tough to do so. But again, thank you. Long ashes and full glasses to all of you. And we'll see you